Well, folks, it's the End of the World podcast, as always. I'm your host, Romeus T. Thanks so much for joining us for another episode. As always, you can contact me over at the over on Twitter at ROMIUST. And you can catch the podcast at anchor.fm/ROMIUST, where you can leave a voicemail and connect with me. We've got, I think, 2 episodes today. So I'll be uploading this episode, and then in a few minutes after that, I will probably start my 3rd episode with the weird guy Bob, and have another episode of the Bob and T Show. I know that you guys seem to enjoy that quite a bit. Today I'm using a new setup with an additional pop microphone over the standard $14 microphone that I've been using. We're going to see if that makes a bit of a difference. It may not. I do have the microphone now on a microphone stand, so I give free usage of my hands. So I don't know if that's going to make a difference. The microphone's now not so close up to my face, not holding it. So I'm hoping that you don't hear me breathing or struggling to breathe. There's a lot of COVID-19 running around, and the lung capacity of a 50-year-old man dying from heart failure is not always the best. Today's episode is going to be a little something called Beauty Privilege and the Solitary Individual, the Coming Dominance of Female-Centered Post-Patriarchal Society. If you're anything like me, you spend most of your time alone, at least all of the time you aren't being forced to socialize at work. If I could do my job remotely instead of in person, I would. And if I could avoid all other human contact, I would. The level of self-isolation I prefer is that of a wounded animal that runs off to die and hide. Just let me die in peace, but don't consume my body afterwards. I used to think that my feelings on the subject were a bit unusual, but not anymore. The solitary individual is the new normal. Probably most of you who are reading or listening to this are single, and in the future, at least 80% of people will be unattached. Pretty privilege, the first segment. I was watching a TikTok video last night, right before bed, and I can't more strongly recommend against you doing that unless you just like annoyingly catchy tunes playing in your mind's ear all night. And I guess, if you hate sleep, go right ahead. Also, perhaps you just enjoy feeling angry after watching stupid people and their stupid content. In my case, I watched a video where a chubby blonde woman complained about losing her pretty privilege. Oh, boo-hoo. I don't know if it's the fact that I'm walking around here with 5 extra IQ points just ticking away like a time bomb, but sometimes I just have to explode at you with a rant, so here it comes. Welcome to normal life. So the video in question begins with a young woman in her mid-20s explaining that she has an eating disorder. During the pandemic, she was away from her job, and she worked on controlling her disorder. She ended up gaining a lot of weight because of that, and hence becoming unconventionally attractive. Or conventionally unattractive. Then she has a breakdown and cries uncontrollable sobs on social media. I guess I'm supposed to feel sorry for you? What, because you're an unattractive emotional basket case whose beauty privilege has been revoked? Welcome to the real world, then. The way you're being treated is just the way we've all been treated, but you were too self-absorbed and stuck up to notice. You don't need to take these attacks, hence, so personally. The other thing is that your beauty privilege protected you against the way most people behave around people they view as basically servants. When people go out to drink, they want to be served. They aren't interested in the servants themselves unless the servant can show that they're not just a server. No one cares about anyone else. The rise of self-checkout machines and other automated services and devices has desensitized us to interactions with our fellow humans. Given the choice, most of us, especially the younger generation, would choose not to interact with other people. I know the only time I interact with humans is when they have something I want. You're either sexually attractive or you have something I desire like food or resources and I just can't push a button to get them. Otherwise, when I encounter you, you are simply an obstacle to me getting the stuff that I want. It's not deliberate, my thinking. Most of this is just an unconscious mechanism working behind the scenes of our mental constructs. Unattractive women who complain about the way men treat them are actually just experiencing the world the way men are treated for the first time, and hence they are horrified by the typical experience of a man. If you're sexually attractive, you have something other people want. Even other women may grant you some respect because they know you are a fierce competitor for attention and resources. Men treat women the way they are attracted to. Men treat women they are attracted to with special care, on the off chance that the women will respond in kind. The bartender wondered why she never received eye contact anymore. When she greeted customers, she no longer got enthusiastic replies about their days. People simply gave the orders to them. "I'll take 2 Bud Lights, please." No one was interested in anything about her other than her looks, but somehow this surprised this woman. People who've just met you in a service job take no real interest in you, the person. You're there to take an order or perform a function. Unless you have some other special status, people aren't going to bother to get to know you. When I ring up your groceries, no one cares or even needs to know about my special interest in reading secondary literature on 19th century philosophers. And honestly, why would they? They just want to get their groceries and leave. Next segment. We all want to live alone and be left alone. One of the reasons people are rude or cruel to other people isn't simply fat hate, though fat hate exists. And it isn't just based on hatred of the working class, though plenty of people are dismissive of working people. Another reason is that people are slowly, socially evolving to become less dependent on one another. The pandemic has intensified a trend that has been growing for decades. There's been a trend towards people living alone in the United States. About 15% of Americans now live alone, and that number has doubled over the last 50 years. Some experts believe this tendency is actually increasing poverty and reducing affordable housing. Next segment. All women have beauty privilege. Complaining about no longer having beauty is ironic when you're a woman. As a man, I would like to have the problem of just being an ugly woman, because even ugly women have privileges that men don't get. Women are trusted by God to protect and dish out the vagina, because access to vagina is so important to men, at least straight men. They bend over backwards to be nice to women. Women must put up, of course, with advances that they don't want, leering, objectification, a host of other ills that you'll find covered more on female-centric women's studies classes than here. It's not the purpose of this podcast to cover those stories. Instead, we cover the stories people don't want to cover, like lady privilege. Since time began, and men have taken their clean riding coats and draped them over mud holes. Men have given women lady privilege. Women get social status and acknowledgement that being male does not afford you. We've all read the statistics on attractiveness and studied the halo effect in Sociology 101 classes, so I don't feel the need to explain too much here, but basically, the more attractive you are, the more money you make, and the nicer people are to you. People also assume you have qualities that you may not even possess, such as goodness. I bring that up to use that analogy of beauty to ugly, to give you the scale of ugly to male. The difference in how you treat good-looking women versus ugly women is how different women and men are treated. And in particular, the solitary man. A man without a wife or a family is a loser in society that has little use. Think of the juvenile male elephant that has been thrust out of the pack. In the case of many juvenile males, we have thrust them not simply from eye contact or respect for their individual personalities, but from society at all. They are thrown to the streets, crime, or the sad loneliness of the mother's basement where they dribble out hate from their keyboards on 4chan and other forums of misanthropy. Next segment, Ugly Guy Syndrome and the Solitary Male. In a strange twist of fate, my particular self is an exception to many of the generalizations I make about men. Unlike my incel brothers, I've actually had sex. If I pursued relationships, I could probably worm my way into the heart of some tired, middle-aged woman with grown children. Like most of the ugly, solitary incels, though, I've discovered that human companionship is simply not worth it. I bring this up so much to get you to understand that the future is solitary. That the men trapped in basements and jerking to the hub, well, they are a preview of your future too. A future that contains sex robots delivered from Amazon, working from home, pandemics that kill the poor and those that go outside. You probably don't believe me about the future. Maybe you're a female and you've always benefited from the advantages of being a carrier of vagina, being connected to society, the attention. Even when unwanted, it alerts you to your value and the desire society has for you. Basement dwellers with their unwashed hair, bizarre hentai porn addictions, awkward social interactions, and the general undesirableness and unfitness for society means that that you as a normal person, you feel protected against all of those factors because that's not you. But you couldn't be more wrong. As industrial economy continues its collapse and the good jobs disappear, men drop out of work and society, they'll become less attractive to women. In addition, men won't be able to attract women because of the new dating, or the majority of men at least, because of the new dating conventions and rules from both sexes, reliance on dating apps and internet dating. As I've discussed previously, simping will become the new pimping. The new alpha males, or the few alpha males that will continue on as if nothing has changed, but the mass of men will drift towards some kind of men going their own way. And many subordinate males will drift towards worshiping and empowering females. All of society really is headed that way. But the forces behind the breakdown of Western culture and social structure, and the devastating decline of the male hormone in men. I call that the Alan Alda syndrome. And it's really accepted only because the alpha male is dead. If you're female, you will be wading into a pool of hypergamy. 80% of you will chase the top 20% of men, and of course that means most of you will fail, though many of you will get knocked up and become single moms. Bitter and despondent, you'll turn to the social contagion of bisexuality out of a yearning and the seemingly endless plasticity of female sexuality. Then you'll become disillusioned by females because, frankly, nothing is ever good enough for women. And then your biological instincts will demand to be dominated on occasion by the stick of masculinity. Eventually, most of these pseudo-relationships will wither and die. Most women will simply date sporadically then. The dawn of matriarchy. But a few women will take on a number of subordinate males and form a new type of society. A number of intelligent entrepreneurs will acquire subordinated males and gather them in. They will board together. Most of the males will be submissive. They will give all of their income to the lady of the house. She will continue to use sex work to earn passive income from her OnlyFans and Venmo on her Tinder apps. And she will turn to prostitution to make the rest of her cash. She will pimp out and force her stable of subs through brainwashing and orgasm denial, and by watching extreme pornography, brainwash them so that they will become essentially prostitutes for her. A recently discovered manuscript detailed exactly how one dominant woman managed to acquire and control 6 sub-males. She began by recommending domination hypnosis recordings to be played at night to the subordinate male at just under audible levels. The use of hypnotic suggestion planted the seeds to gain rapid control over her men. The alternative history of a female-dominated Handmaid's Tale. The manuscript, which reportedly was designed with the purpose to train young initiate doms on how to set up a household, as a pretext toward setting up a new female-centered, dominated society. Just think about The Handmaid's Tale, but the opposite. It begins with hypnosis and moves banally to things like edge masturbation. The doms are instructed to keep the subs in a dark, enclosed room with headphones and a tablet. The edge masturbation sessions start at a few hours a day, but eventually they last the entire time that the sub is not working or sleeping. Her subordinates will be induced by drugs like caffeine, alcohol, marijuana, or even harder drugs, perhaps PCP. The extreme pornography will cycle through all sorts of various kinds, but each session that was highlighted and each kind of video will have a specific purpose. There were 6 highlighted videos that in this manuscript were purported to be in order to brainwash. The first one was edge masturbation. It was reported that edging fogs the mind and delivers endorphins and allows the mind to be controlled. Femdom and Fendom, extreme pornography, teach extreme pro-female views. They then moved on to humiliation porn that degrades the male. The fourth was forced bisexuality and forced gender emasculation. The fifth, ruined orgasms, which devalue male pleasure and the penis. And finally it ended with castration videos, ending the male hormone, devolving the male penis. After one had been subjected, their group of males to these techniques of brainwashing had been complete, one woman gains control of the family and household, or once a woman gains control of the family and the household, it is a matter of time that women gain complete control of society. As an aside, I have detailed that society and how I expected it to come about on my Twitter account in the form of a work of fiction. I would have linked to that in the blog post, but honestly I haven't been able to find that set of tweets. But you can go through and read every one of my tweets I've ever made, and perhaps you'll find it. As you can see, though, the complaints about beauty privilege from the point of view of the formerly beautiful are nonsensical. Asking for advantages that are in the first place unearned and immoral is shameful. Women can't lose the beauty privilege because they always maintain it over males in the first place. Women often misunderstand the role of beauty and attractiveness in the games of dating and mating that they play between the sexes. The hypergamy of modern times leaves most men alone and worthless, and the upcoming future will dissatisfy most women to the point that they will initiate a non-democratic female version of The Handmaid's Tale, where men will be forced to shed their masculinity and worship women. Just another reason we need to ban sociology teachings, or surrender, otherwise we should just surrender to the female wave that is coming. Well, folks, it looks like it's going to be the end of this episode of the podcast. There were parts of that podcast script that apparently I did not finish writing. So if some of it didn't make sense, I'll apologize for that. Perhaps I'll actually go through and clean up some of the writing when I post it over at the selfhelpcenter.blogspot.com. That's where you can go to find all of the scripts as well as any kind of reference material. I will usually post on that as well. Not only is today's episode going to be posted very soon, of course, keep a lookout for episode 3 of the T and Bob show coming up. I plan on doing that pretty soon. And as always, good night and good luck, America.